Hi everyone, this is the lecture to accompany Chapter 6 in your textbook. This is a brief overview of the information in Chapter 6, so make sure you read the chapter and understand all the information in it. Okay, let's talk about researching your topic. The first phase is preparing to research. You always need to start with what you know or what you think you know about the topic. List information you know about it and words you associate with it. Write out a few sentences that express what you know. Then look at them and figure out how you learned that information. Did you read about it somewhere? Did someone tell it to you? You need to realize that this serves only as a starting point. You can't assume that what you know about it is all that you need to know. Next, you need to think about other sources who might know about the topic. It could be individuals, groups, organizations, or web pages that might have more information on it. There might be events in the community that address it. You'd be surprised to find out how many sources there are that are specifically about your topic. Speaking of sources, you need to understand the difference between a primary source and a secondary source of information. A primary source is the original creator of the information. For instance, if an organization like the Pew Research Center has done some research and comes up with conclusions based on that research and write an article about it, their article that discusses those findings would be a primary source. A secondary source is a source that writes an article talking about those findings and their interpretation of what was discussed in the original article. So if a newspaper reporter reads the original report and decides it's newsworthy, then they're going to write an article discussing those findings, and it's going to be published in their newspaper. That's a secondary source. So how do you find the information you need? Of course, most of you simply say something like, "I'll Google it." Hey, I Google things all the time, so I completely understand. However, for our purposes, there are many options other than Google, and they're often much better than Google at finding the specific information that you need. Our research librarian will give you lots of helpful information about the many excellent resources at your fingertips, like books, journals, magazines, newspapers, all the different kinds of reference works, non-print resources like video and images, and the vast array of government publications. But I'll let the librarian do that at our workshop. Just know that for your informative and persuasive speeches, you're going to need to find some sources on the library website. But I don't expect you to get all your information from the library. I know that there's a wealth of information out there on the web. You just need to know all the tips and tricks to access it. You need to know about the different kinds of search engines. Google is not the only one. First, there are meta search engines. Now, these are search engines that actually search other search engines, and using them is going to give you a breadth of information you wouldn't find on just Google alone. Some of the more popular ones are Dogpile and Xquick. You can find out how to access them by looking in the textbook. Then, of course, there are the regular search engines, including Google, but also Ask.com, Bing, and Yahoo. Each of these search engines uses its own proprietary algorithms to search for your topic, so they're not all exactly alike. Then there are specialized search and meta-search engines, like Google Scholar, which specifically looks for scholarly books, journals, and conference papers. But I'll tell you something, you'll probably get better results on our library databases. Or USA.gov, which searches all government resources and is an incredibly good source of information. Then there are things called web directories, which are basically indexes of web pages. Best of the Web indexes web pages by subject area, and the World Wide Web Virtual Library does pretty much the same thing. You should be able to find web pages associated with your topic. Now, about Wikipedia. Of course you use it, and so do I. It's an incredible wealth of information. However, it is editable by anyone. And although it has a huge number of volunteers who police it to make sure everything on it's correct, they don't always catch every mistake immediately. It might take them a while. Because of this, most instructors, including me, don't allow you to use Wikipedia as a source for your speeches. I won't stop you from doing research on it, of course, but you just can't cite it in your speech. Which means if you find something on Wikipedia you want to use in your speech, you have to go back to the original source of that material and cite that, not Wikipedia. But you can usually find that at the end of the Wikipedia article on the topic under References. There are lots of things you can do to maximize your search results. First, try your search using a variety of keywords. The example here shows that these related keywords, free speech, First Amendment, Bill of Rights, will likely bring up different results, many of which might fit your topic. Then there's the advanced search option. Many people don't even know that exists. Now, depending on your search engine, you're going to find the advanced search in a different place. But once you do, you can specify lots of different options to refine your search by keywords, dates, and even the domain. In this case, if you specify .gov, it will only search for your topic on .gov websites. And consider searching for things besides articles. You can search for images, audio, and video files as well. If you find something you want to use, check the copyright information to make sure the creator allows his or her work to be used. And always make sure to give credit to the creator when you use it. When students think of research, they often overlook one of the best ways to get information about a topic, by interviewing someone who has expertise and experience with the topic. Using information you gain from an interview really helps your credibility, because the audience can see that you prepared well and sought out that information. You might already know of someone you can interview about your topic, or you come across the name of a local person who's knowledgeable about it while doing preliminary research. Not everyone has the time or the willingness to meet with you, but it never hurts to ask, and most people are glad to do it as long as you don't waste their time. The textbook discusses how to go about interviewing someone. You can't just wing it. You really need to think about the questions you'll be asking. During the interview, be polite and curious. Keep to your interview guide. Treat it like a structured conversation. Make sure you get permission if you're going to record the interview. Otherwise, you're going to need to take notes while still keeping engaged with the interviewee. There's a great example of an interview in the chapter. Make sure you read it, as well as ways speakers can incorporate information gained from interviews into their speeches. It's your responsibility to make sure the supporting material that ends up in your speech is the best you can find. So when you find information about your topic, you need to evaluate it to make sure it's something that you can use in your speech. The text discusses 3 evaluation criteria: relevance, purpose, and validity. Relevance has to do with how closely the information is related to your topic, not just in general, but to the point you're trying to support, explain, or prove. It's easy enough to tell if a source is talking about your topic or not, but you also need to determine if a piece of information is something that specifically relates to a point you're trying to make. Then you need to determine the purpose of the information. Why was an article written? Some people have difficulty telling the difference between a hard news story, which is an article designed to inform an audience about something, and usually answers the questions who, what, when, where, and why, and an editorial or opinion piece that's designed to persuade the audience to interpret that information in a particular way. Articles you might find in journals or on educational databases are generally scholarly research articles designed to inform about the topic. There are a few kinds of web pages you need to look out for, like satire and comedy websites such as The Onion. They might have articles about your topic, but they're designed to be funny or satirical and are simply meant to entertain, so don't use information from them as if it was legitimate. And these days, more and more articles and even entire websites are being created to deliberately mislead you. So you need to check the information for validity, which has to do with the underlying soundness of the topic. One thing to look at is currency. How recent is this information? Generally, you want to find the most up-to-date information on your topic because our knowledge about things changes over time, so look to see when an article was published. A good rule of thumb is that you should look for information published within the last 2 to 5 years. However, for things that change more frequently, you might want information from last week or even yesterday. And of course, you want accurate information. Information is considered accurate if it fits, in general, with what other experts who are knowledgeable about the topic are saying. Look for other information from reliable sources that support the claims being made. Look at their logic, evidence, and conclusions. And also check the authority or the credibility of the person stating this information. Who wrote this article? Where is it published? Are those people or entities trustworthy? If you don't know who they are, you can look them up to see what their expertise is, if any. Remember that anyone with a computer and a web connection can create a web page or write articles or write a blog and pretty much say whatever they please. It's up to you to make sure you're finding and using the best information possible. An ethical speaker does not give their audience incorrect or misleading information from dubious sources, even if it's unintentional. Be careful. There are websites with information that's unverified or completely incorrect, either intentionally because the author didn't check their facts or deliberately because they want to provide false or extremely biased or skewed information in order to sway your opinion. As I said, be careful. Another thing you need to be careful of when using the information you find in your research is plagiarism. Recognizing and avoiding it is a big part of your ethical responsibility as a speaker. You might not think it's a big deal to use someone else's ideas without telling your audience where you got them, but it is, especially in Western and European culture. Figure 6.2 in your textbook has a list of the different levels of plagiarism, but it tends to fall into these basic categories. The worst is using someone else's entire work or large portions of a single work and passing it off as your own. Almost as bad as cutting and pasting large portions of a few different articles into your speech and maybe just tying them together with a few sentences of your own work. It really doesn't matter if you cite the sources there or not, it's still generally not your work. Probably the most common type of plagiarism is consistently failing to verbally cite sources during your speech, even if you have a bibliography. The audience doesn't know which are your ideas and which came from elsewhere, and they don't have a copy of your works cited page. It's something you need to keep in mind when creating your outline, speaking notes, and practicing your speech. Most plagiarism is a violation of copyright and intellectual property laws. This means that in general you have to obtain someone's permission before you use their words, ideas, and images. However, the concept of fair use allows you to use limited portions of someone's work without their express permission as long as you properly credit and cite them as the source. Charles Lipson, in his book Doing Honest Work in College, outlined 3 essential principles for academic integrity. Here they are. When you say you did the work yourself, you actually did it. When you rely on someone else's work, you cite it in the bibliography, in the outline, and verbally during your speech presentation. When you present research material, you do so fairly and truthfully. If you follow these principles, you should be fine. If you have questions about any aspect of fair use and plagiarism, I can help you. There are a couple of things you can do to help yourself avoid plagiarism. Accurate note-taking helps. You can make sure to identify quoted material by making it bold or highlighting it, so when you go back over your notes and decide to use something in your speech, you can tell it's a quote and who said it. If you decide not to use the exact wording, but instead paraphrase it to make it shorter or easier for the audience to understand, make sure you're rewording it, not just changing 1 or 2 words, but still keeping the intent the same as the author's. And even though you've changed the words, you still need to credit the original author. Changing the words doesn't make it your idea now. It still belongs to the author. The book has a good in-depth explanation of when and how you should paraphrase. You need to acknowledge all the sources you use in your speech. In the bibliography, you need to make sure you have complete, correct bibliographic information in either MLA or APA formatting. Include those sources in the text of the outline where you use that information. And don't forget to include oral citations in your speech delivery. Oral citations are very important. As I said before, the audience needs to be able to tell where your information came from while listening to your speech. So, how do you accomplish this? Well, here's an example of how you might put bibliographic information in your works cited or reference page. You would need to find correct formatting information from either APA or MLA style manuals, and those can be found on our library website. And then you need to create the correct citations for your outline. This example shows an APA formatted citation for a TED Talk by Christine Sun Kim. This would go on the reference page of your outline, which is the last page. Then, in the text of your speech, you would put something like this right before you tell us what she said. In an August 2015 TED Fellow Retreat talk, artist Christine Sun Kim, who was born deaf, said this about American Sign Language. And then you'd either quote her or paraphrase her words. When we look at how to create an outline, this is going to make more sense to you. Here's a good summary of research guidelines to make this process more effective, keep you on track, and help you avoid plagiarism. Start early. Plan out how long it's going to take to put that speech together. Definitely schedule research time and stick to it. Ask questions as needed, not just from me, but from the research librarians. They're here to help you as well. Carefully record the information you find on each source you're going to use. Take good, accurate notes. Revise your speech as needed. In other words, keep reviewing your specific purpose and thesis to make sure you're on track. Maybe you need to revise them or refocus your research so you're finding things that help you fulfill that thesis. Know when to move on. Don't spend so much time on research that you don't have time to put the speech together. And know when to go back to the research process if you find there are gaps in your speech or you simply need more information. Using effective research techniques can help you create a great speech. This is the end of the lecture on Chapter 6. Now you're ready to go to MindTap.